Isn't that cool sounding? Good evening, everybody. I'm Quantum Synths, and thank you for joining the live stream. Another Wednesday night. If it's a Wednesday night, it must be a live stream. So we have an exciting program tonight. A lot of cool things I want to go to. If you've been listening to my channel and some of the things I posted the last couple of days, I've been working on this ambient piece. I'm just calling it Ambient Soundscapes. I have a working title, which is Spirit in the Mountain. But I wanted to go over some of the parts and how I've made them, how I created this, ambient texture. Actually, I could probably be doing it with just one module, although we'll add a little bit to it tonight, but I've been using the Monumatic by Nobula and this one patch, and honestly I don't even remember the name of it. I think it's square wave, short square wave, or large square wave, I don't know. Anyway, I think it's number 8 or 7. Anyway, it's right here. If you have one. And I really, really love it. I'm, really trying to spend time to get to know it, spend time to really figure out the ins and outs of it and how to make it really sing. And it's such a cool module. And, right now I've got the attack set a little high. I've got the release set past noon, so a little extra release. Resonance all the way up. If you know from using my East Beast, I love putting the resonance all the way up. Filter down pretty far, about 9 o'clock. The envelope pretty far up. And, you get this cool, classic, analog synth sound. We got a lot of reverb on there. Turn some of that reverb down. Never resist adding delay. Alright, we'll get rid of too. Just a little reverb. And what's really cool is, it's touch sensitive. So the harder I play, the more the amplitude and the amplitude of the filter goes up. The filter envelope. And because it's a note polyphony, and we'll take advantage of this later, you can have a note ring out. And that, my friends, is the advantage of having MIDI and having polyphonic modules inside of the eurorack. Okay, so let's see, where do we start? Also, one technique that a lot of people do is a burst. They have a burst of notes, and it takes, in my mind, it takes a lot of hardware to get that done. You could do it in VCV Rack also. Like VCV Rack has a couple modules that are like burst generators. And basically it's, when a note hits, you get a very quick, burst of notes. Like that. And I was wondering, how could I do that, with what I have, and how could I do it? Is there a way I could get the Oxy to do that? And so I've been playing around with that, and I want to show that to you also. So on channel 2, let me just unmute that. Okay, so I have this sequence on track 2, which is going to the East Beast. And let's play that and unmute. Not sure what happened, but the notes are actually supposed to start here. So let's... Okay, it's only supposed to be 16 steps. Okay, let's see what follows on. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay. And then, that should be off. Okay. And actually, this is supposed to start 1, 2, 3, 4. It's supposed to start over here. So we'll enter the note there. Okay. All right. So I have a held note for 12 beats, and then I have this note here at the beginning. And to make that burst, okay. So if you hold down the note, like here. So if you could see this, you may have to zoom in after the fact, but right now I have the trigger set to off. And let me set the trigger, well, for now, let me just set it up really high, because we want to hear what's going on. Okay, 95%. Okay, so the trick to getting a burst is you hold down the note, and with this page function, for those who have an Oxy 1, you hit the page function, and you go into repetition. Oh, I really lost everything here. Huh. Okay, I don't know how that happened. Okay, but it's easy to recreate. So we're going to do repeats. And we're going to set the duration to three measures, three notes, or 3 steps. And okay, 15. And we're going to set the repeats to 15. And so what that means, it's going to give you 15 repeats inside of 3 steps. Okay, and then we're going to come down here to range, and we're going to set that to 7 steps, which is the max. And then we're going to go back here, and we're going to set the volume to increasing volume, say 50%. And we're going to set the duration to, so this is going to, a positive amount will lengthen the duration between the notes, but we want it to shorten it. So we're going to say minus 4%. Okay. And so now, every time it hits that note, we're going to get a little burst. And let's see how that sounds. Okay. All right. So that's pretty cool. And then actually I have this start later. So this started, I think it started around, well, let's just start it at 8. So we'll turn that off. We'll start it there. We'll go there. Okay. And we're going to play with this in a minute. But for now, so we have this because we want to hear the burst, and we want to hear the tail of it ring out a little bit. Okay, so that's on the East Beast, and we want that to be kind of ambient. So we're going to turn the attack up a little bit on that. Not too much filter. And we actually want to lower the note by an octave, because we want it to be kind of a drone. Now, this note, the burst, you don't want to happen all the time, right? Because then it gets too played out. So what we're going to do is we're going to press that, and we're going to turn the trigger down. And I usually keep it around maybe 15%. Because you really don't want it that frequent. So now we just have a kind of a bass drone. And we'll wait for it. So this is good. 15% is really not that often. Okay. So that's it. Okay, so now the other thing is we want to make that have a little more variety, right? You know, for me, I really don't like to hear the same series of notes over and over again like that. I want it to change a little bit and make it a little unpredictable. So what we can do is if we hold down the note again and we hit the page button and we go to the page after repetitions, and maybe some of you have guessed this already, we could turn on an accumulator, right? And so actually, oh, that is on now. Okay. So what this means is that it's going to, every cycle is going to increase by whatever the amount is. So we set the amount to 2. So 2 is cool because then you have an accumulated total. Here would be 7. So when it gets to 7, it's going to then start over again, but it's going to start at the root plus 1 because the amount is 2, right? So that's kind of cool. So then you kind of get this irregular series of notes, and that's going to be the seed for the burst generator. Okay, and so that's kind of how that all works. And then, in addition, there's more. If I go into, on this track, if I go into the random performance mode, and I could set a random note value, so here it's set to 36, and the octave is set to 41%. So that means every time there's a new cycle of the sequence, there's going to be a chance that these notes are going to change based on these parameters here for randomness. And it follows the key. So right now this track is in major, so we're in C major. So even though it's going to be random and select notes randomly, it's always going to be from the C major scale. And so that's pretty cool. And so if we go back to this note, let's turn the trigger up to 50%. And so now listen a little bit. Right, so here you hear the note change because of the random performance generator. So even though this is set for C and it's static, that will create some nice variations of that note. And we'll also work with the accumulator to change the seed value of this note every time the burst generator happens. And so if you listen to it over a long piece of time, a long period of time, which is what usually happens with ambient music, you're going to get this really nice, kind of random or pseudo-random, but quantized, pitch quantized, and so it'll fit nicely in the music. And then I would actually even slow this down. So right now I have it set to a 1/8 division, and you could set it to a 1/4 division and make it really slow, and then add more reverb. Always add more reverb. More delay. Let's see what else. We got the filter open just a smidgen modulated by the LFO, which isn't too much. Sometimes you could turn glide on, and then the glide will give you some nice glide between note changes. Although sometimes it sounds a little weird, so you have to play with that. So let's just give this a listen now. That's a little too much. Yeah, that's the glide. So sometimes the glide doesn't work. If we turn it on full, let's see if that smooths it out a little bit. Yeah, it kind of sounds like a yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So let's turn the glide off. Anyway, so that's how you create a little burst generator with the Oxy one. And you can play with this and, change all kind of parameters and, you could have it go up, you could have the notes go up, you could have the notes go down. And you could spread them out. You can have them start off close and spread, or you can have them start off spread out and come closer together. So, there's a lot you could do with that. But having this ability to create these kind of bursts of notes, I think is very cool. Okay. So that's this ambient pad. Okay. And then, so I want to go back to the monumatic. So what's happening here is, right, the attack is opening the filter. Slowly, we can make it even slower. And then the release. Now, what's cool in the monumatic is if you set the release all the way, the note will ring forever. So it's like a hold function. So, the only thing is, it's pretty static, because the envelope is already kicked in and it's just being held. So unless you were to come in here and manipulate it in real time, which you could do, right? Because the resonance is all the way up. You really get the cool sounds by lowering the filter, not when you raise it, you get to get the screeching sound. So that's one thing in live performances. I'm always like, don't open the filter too much, and then at some point you just lose the note, right? So, but when you're using this is a low pass 24 dB, and any kind of low pass filter, the resonance really kicks in when you lower the filter amount. Anyway, that's how most synths work. Not all filters work that way, but most of them. Right. But who wants to stand here and turn the knob, for the whole piece? So we can modulate that, okay? And so what's really cool on the Monumatic is they have a dedicated CV input for the filter cutoff. And I'm going to plug this into my 4 LFO here from Behringer, and it's on channel 2. So I have this set to quad mode. So in quad mode, what that means is the first LFO controls the overall rate of the LFOs, of all the other following LFOs. And then 2, 3, and 4 are 90 degrees in phase from the first one. So 90, 180, 270. And so that's how the quad mode works. And it's going to give us some really nice randomness, right? So if I plug just the sine wave into channel 2, right? And that's because the filter is now being opened and closed by this channel. Now, the one thing about all these Behringer modules, from, I don't know if this is based on the System 15 or whatever, one of those bigger systems, but they're really trigger happy. And you have to really, like I got a filter and VCOs, the gray ones I used to have, and they were basically unusable because every time you touch the knobs, the thing would just I think it was 0 to 10 volts, and there was no way to change that. I heard in the original modular system there was a switch on the back of the module. You could make it 0 to 3 volts, but 0 to 10 volts, just like controlling that thing was, just tuning it was really difficult. Anyway, so the trick here is to keep the LFO1 really slow, and so you want to move it in micro amounts, okay, and you can hear how it will affect how much the filter is open, right, because now it's really slow, right, so that comes on, and then 90 degrees later this filter will kick in, and then the others. Now, one cool thing, it does go to audio rates. So so now they're both going at audio rate speeds. And I'm still playing that first C, right? Because the Monumatic is in forever mode. But that's not what we want here for this piece. So we want it really slow. Okay. And we also want to turn the reverb back up. So one way to get rid of that gap between the notes is to turn the reverb up. And then the reverb will help span the space between the gaps. So that's a nice little trick. And then of course we could add delay. And all these things help to create this ambient swell, this texture of sound underlying your music. Okay. And so now we could, so this is the filter cutoff, so if we open this, we get a little more variation. Okay, now there's another parameter that we would want to modulate. I'm trying to get better at remembering to turn off the music when I'm talking. And that's the resonance, right? So I have the resonance turned up full. Oh, sorry, before we get to that. So if I raise the filter level, so there's more headroom to modulate. And now you're starting to get that, ambient pad. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to modulate the resonance. And there basically are two free slots in the Monumatic that you can assign to anything, and as soon as you plug it in, you have 2 seconds, and whatever knob you touch next will be assigned. And so I've already done that and applied this CV into the resonance, and now we're going to plug that in. So remember, since I have the reverb and the delays turned up, sometimes it takes a little bit to hear your changes because the sound is getting a little smeared, right, by the After Effects. All right, so that's one note, C. Let's go. Now, because we're polyphonic, I believe it's still holding on to that first C. Yeah, well, also where release is in infinite mode. Let's play it together. I think that's a pretty cool ambient swell for your ambient music. And we can slow it down even a little more. Alright, well I don't know about you, I can listen to that forever. I keep saying I'm going to open up a 24/7 YouTube channel of just generated ambient drone music. Okay, so then this afternoon I was doing something else, which was since we're in infinite release mode, so I just entered a couple of C major chords in, broken, just individual notes. And then if we delay the timing between the notes, and then also remember it's velocity sensitive, so you can make it where some notes will come in louder than others. And there you have your ambient drone. Now let's add the East Beast back in. See how that sounds. All right. I think it's already starting to sound pretty cool. By the way, I am performing this coming Saturday night in San Jose, California at the South Bay Sonic Circuits, which is an EMOM, electronic music open mic meetup. And we perform at, I think it's I should know the name, it's a church, I think it's the New Christ Church. They donate their space to us. It's a very community-minded church. The pastor's a really great guy, and he lets us go there once a month, and we've been off for the summer, and so this is our return performance, and I'll be performing there Saturday night. If you're in San Jose, come by. You could shoot me a little message on YouTube. I'll give you the address. I just don't remember the name of the church offhand. But anyway, it'll be a fun time, and I'll be performing this piece Saturday night. Okay, so let's see, what else do I have on this piece? So, okay, so track 8 is just a little bass thing. And so the idea is that I start off, right, with the ambient drones. Actually, it's start off single notes that come in with the ambient drones, and then at some point bring in, well, then the ambient drone, then the burst generator with the pads, and then this little bass sound like that. And these are, I made these in Pigments. You've all heard this before. Right, it makes a really good bass drone for longer held notes, and it also is a very cool bass thing. And yeah, I was kind of thinking of Psycho Killer. You know the song, the Talking Heads, bum 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 bum. You know, that was the original idea, but I kind of changed it a little bit. But that driving bass sound. And then the last piece of this is I have some chord stabs on the piano, and that's using the polyphonic. And let's see what we got here. Let's unmute that. And so I really like the polyphonic. It's got some great piano sounds. It's got some very cool other sounds. It's got some other wave sounds that I'll probably never use. But it took me a while to dial in the grand piano sound. Let me stop this and turn this off. Okay, it did take me a while to dial that in. I do like the bass notes and the piano sound. And it certainly beats the piano I'd been using for a while that I created, an Omnisphere. Yeah, it took me a while to dial it in. One mistake I was making on it was I had the dynamics set in the mid-level. And I was just getting way too much of that. That ringing sound. And it took a while. I can't remember if I read the manual or watched a video, but it was talking about, why am I still getting that sound? Anyway, so this dynamics is actually the key. So I turned it all the way down. And now you don't get that craziness. And I can actually bring in the second waveform, because with dynamics down it won't. And then you can get the true hammer sounds. And I think that's a really nice piano sound. Okay, so anyway, so I have these chord stabs. So all that to say, I have these chord stabs. And I can get them really crisp by turning the release down, obviously. All right, and then if I add that to the bass sound. And that was the idea for the end of the piece. Okay, so I think one of the versions I put on YouTube had that at the ending. The one I put up there today did not. But that's my plan to, end with that kind of, up-tempo, driving beat with the bass and the pad, the pigment bass and the piano sound. And, and that's really the making of, I forgot one important thing, folks. So you can see over here, on my iPad, there's an iPad Air, and this is GeoShred. Now, okay, what do I need to do to turn? Okay. Okay, it's probably because this is still going. Yeah, right. All right, let me just turn the release off for now. Okay, so I had an old iPad, and sounds like a Mother Goose. There was an old iPad that lived in a shoe. She had so many cables, she didn't know what to do. And you can see in my studio, I've got so many cables. Anyway, so that iPad died a slow and painful death, and that was a couple of years ago, and I just this week replaced the iPad. So for some reason, I just didn't want to get another iPad right away, and so I went in other directions musically, but I really wanted to get GeoShred again, and so there is a desktop version, and if you remember, I had the that Arai Touch, which is a really decent, MPE controller, and we were banging away, my friend Rich and I, with drumsticks and the whole thing, but it wasn't quite what I wanted, and so I've sold that, and I've invested in this iPad Air, and I'm now a proud user of GeoShred again. I mean, this is hands down the best modeled ambient guitar sounds I've ever played. On any synth, anywhere, this is amazing. I mean, the expression you get is just really incredible. Anyway, so the video I released today, I was playing the GeoShred on top of that ambient pad. So that was just two instruments, right? That was just, right, I gotta put some notes back in. Turn the release up. Oh, not piano, sorry. that was the basic premise of the whole piece this afternoon. And then, you know, if I add in all the other things, that's just going to form the form of the piece, and to flush it all out. And so, you know, again, I have to say I'm not sponsored. I'm not getting paid. If they want to pay me, I'm happy to. But you'll always, even if they pay me, and they're not, you'll always get my honest opinion. And you know, there are definitely things inside of GeoShred that I would, you know, could be improved. But for what it is, it's amazing. And you know, like Jordan Rudess has always said, playing on glass is like no other experience. And I have to say, he's 100% right. When you're sliding your finger, I've tried a whole bunch of different alternate controllers, MPE and otherwise, and there is nothing like this experience. And I was watching an interview with Jordan, and he was saying how programming, you know, they did something where they're rounding out, like when you're sliding, they've got an algorithm that rounds out like where you're landing to make it always sound musical. And it's amazing that it must be a really complicated algorithm, because I know GeoShred is very popular in India, and in India, you know, they use a different tuning, tuning scale than we do, tuning modes than we do here. A lot of microtonal, and if you go on YouTube and watch, there are a lot of people from India playing GeoShred. In fact, they have a whole collection of instruments, you know, with Indian-based instruments. So, I don't know. You know, I love this program. Okay, so I think I talked a lot, 45 minutes. Wow. Well, I hope you all got something out of it. You know, please like and subscribe. That really helps. I'm up to 88 or 89 subscribers, and I want to break 100. You know, if I break 100, then I'll break 500, and then I'll break 1,000. But you know, if you enjoy this at all, you know, please, you know, like and subscribe, and you know, comment. You know, I answer everybody's comments, and yeah, I really enjoy making, you know, this kind of music. And I posted, you know, I did shows with my friends Rich and Jonah, and we went into a rehearsal studio yesterday, and you know, the stuff we're coming up with is pretty cool. So we're going to definitely do some more performances coming up, and yeah, so stay tuned. You know, there's a lot of good things coming. We're in the 9th month now of 2025. So we have 3.5 months left this year, and a lot of great stuff will be coming. And so stay tuned, and I'm going to perform for a little bit. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for tuning in, and please tune in again next week. Thank you. All right, that is Spirit in the Mountain, an ambient journey through an ambient journey of soundscapes and textures. All right, well, thank you all for joining tonight. I really appreciate everybody being here. I'm Quantum Synths. It's been a fun Wednesday night, live streaming here on YouTube. Please join me every Wednesday night, and if you can, hit the like button, subscribe, leave comments. And I hope you enjoyed the music, and come back, listen to the music, and if you happen to be in San Jose on Saturday night, come see me at South Bay Sonic Circuits, our monthly EMOM electronic music jam session. And well, that's it for tonight. Have a great evening. I hope you enjoyed that, and make some great music this week. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.